Hello and welcome to the Art Market Podcasts. Today I'm here with Swales. For the listeners, can you tell us a little bit about your business and the story behind it?
I work predominantly, I do sculpture. My background is figurative sculpture. So I was trained as a figurative sculptor working in classical bronze work, trained at the Dalton Institute. Previously I used to work on sort of sculptures, statues, that kind of thing, small figurines and so forth. But I've stopped doing that now, keeping with the figurative theme, and I produce work out of natural materials, of sticks, wire, and produce animal pieces predominantly, so birds and stags and that sort of thing. Something that I think is quite unique. It allows me to do something that I think is eco-friendly, because we're not using very invasive processes like bronze, but something that's still traditional, because I really love the natural world and all the kind of shapes and forms and that can offer to a sculptor. So that's probably it in a nutshell.
And have you always been inspired by nature and woodland?
Yeah, nature's always been my thing, really. I've got a little bit of an obsession with it, to be honest. I think there's very few things you can't do with natural forms. I think every shape that needs to be created probably already has been somewhere in the world. And so I've always thought that a room in the market for contemporary figurative work, I think there was a move away from it for a while. But I think people will always appreciate traditional work, and there's always opportunity to do something new and exciting. So it was probably 18 months ago now when I started become a stickman, I suppose, 18 months ago. And when it was just inspired by a walk in the woods, really. I saw a piece of wood that looked like a stag's head, and I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if I can find the rest of the limbs and parts to go with that. I kind of started a search for a jigsaw that I never knew existed, really. And I assembled the stag, and I was really pleased with it. And I think the response I got from other people who saw it was like, oh, I've never seen that before, and it looked really, really beautiful. So that was where the journey began, really. And since then, I spent a lot of time walking in the woods looking for materials, which is a very, very enjoyable thing to do.
Talking about your process, does it change every time? I think probably sometimes you'll, like you did with the stag, see the stag first and then start creating it, or sometimes does it start from sketches and then you work on a piece of wood?
Yeah, everything is. I suppose there's a formula that I follow. So everything has. I try and make it as lifelike as possible. So I try and keep an element of realism. So the proportions are generally as close to natural proportions, which draws on my skills as a figurative sculptor. But in terms of where the piece goes, that's really down to the materials, because you will start with an idea in mind, but then you can't find the bits you need to do it. So, if I could find the stag head that I found first time again, I'd be delighted. But it's just not out there, and that's the beauty of it, really. So there's a lot of pieces in the studio that are half finished because you get to a point where you haven't got the bit that you need, and if you go searching for it, you probably won't find it. So you get to a point where things are kind of almost finished, and then you've got to draw them to a close when you find the right piece. So you start with an idea in mind. You may sketch for inspiration. You may look at reference books and so on to get a feel for the type of animal that you want to work on and the pose that you want to adopt. But where the piece goes is generally down to the materials. And I like that. It gives you that feeling of sketching. So I'm always a big fan of doing life drawing, but I wasn't never a fan of doing sort of tortured drawing where you'd spend hours with a rubber and, close observation. I was very much more around, I'm going to draw a picture, but I'm going to give myself 60 seconds. And whatever I can do in that 60 seconds is the best I can do. And that gives you more of a gestural feel about the artwork and more of the pose and the dynamism, rather than torturing yourself over an eye or an ear or something. And I think that's the way the sculpture goes. It's led by the materials, and you've got to try and just create and assemble a piece using your skills to adapt what you get into what you want to see, really. So that's how it works for me.
It's definitely a labour of love, isn't it? And it's so organic, the way it's produced and manifested. It's asking the universe in some kind of way to bring these things to you when you go on your nature walks. And I think that's a lovely process, but it is a labour of love, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is easy to get kind of all sentimental and kind of deep about the meanings of twigs and sparks and things, and you can get drawn into it a little bit. But you're absolutely right. I think it's not the most straightforward thing to do. It's also not repeatable. So everything's a one-off. So when you've done one, it's gone. So you can't reproduce, which can be a business model headache, but also can be a benefit because it makes the work more unique, but by definition doesn't make it as repeatable. So the production line to produce the work is hard. You can't produce a mould and that kind of thing, so that's quite tricky. But in terms of the kind of the ecological side and the kind of ethos of it, I think I feel comfortable with it. I don't feel like I'm exploiting the resources. I'm not. The cost isn't prohibitive, so I don't have to go and borrow money to do it. It's very much something that you can start off with yourself, and also it's very accessible. Well, that's what I like about it. And by accessible, I mean that anyone can do it. My nieces and nephews and kids are always sometimes far too big, but also always bringing sticks. Oh, Daddy, I found this stick. You're gonna love this stick. No, I'm not a dog, but they do bring me sticks and materials on a regular basis, which is nice. And they also try themselves to create their own pieces. And when you get down to it, 4 sticks stuck into a ball of clay with another stick on top does look like an animal. You can create these things, and I think it's really accessible. People think, I could play the driftwood, I could do that. And then they tell you the stories about when you go to art shows and fairs. People always tell you a story about the piece of driftwood that they found on the beach, they've got it in the cupboard, and they always wonder what to do with it. And maybe I could do that. So it's a real nice accessibility about it, because people think I could try that too, and that's what I like about it as well.
Do you do workshops?
I did a really interesting one for the Doncaster Arts Fringe. A bunch of people involved, and we brought materials. I brought sticks, and I brought string, and I brought wire, some more like seed pods and some more natural materials, and we just basically had a bit of a session on how to create animals, how to work through the processes, and they were really interesting. And I was inspired by what the people created. I went in there with, I like to work on a kind of vintage theme, so I had all the sticks in old sweet jars, and I had all the seed pods and all the berries in old sweet jars, kind of a stick and mix. And when you come to the store, you'll see that I have all my own materials in jars. I have big sweet jars with long leggy bits and knobbly knee bits. It looks like an old sweet shop. And I brought a recipe card, so I made little recipe cards of how you'd make a bird, or how you would make a deer. You need 4 sticks, you need 1 seed pod, you need paint, and so on and so forth. And I came fully armed to give them a list, a piece of paper, and say, here, create this. And they were completely off beat. They were like, no, I want to do this. It's a bit way out there. I want to create a toadstool. One person created a Chinese house. It was just fabulous. There's one, I'll always remember it, there's a guy called Babson who'd come over from Tanzania, and he was just visiting the country for a couple of weeks on a sort of a cultural visit. And he'd come to the Fringe, and he was in the workshop, and he made the most fantastic turtle. I still have it in my house. So, because you're going to take it back to it with him in a suitcase, because you're not allowed to take kind of living things out of the country for various reasons. And although it's all fallen material, it's all fallen wood, it is still kind of living. He couldn't take it with him, so he left it. So I took it, and I've got it on my windowsill at home, and I've got a photograph of it. And the kids love Babson's turtle. They call it Babson's turtle. And I'll send you some photographs of the piece they created. They're absolutely fabulous. And some of the things they've done inspired me. I never thought of doing one of those, or I never thought, and because that's kind of the beauty of it. When I look at a stick, I might see a stag's head, but someone would say, no, that's not a stag, that's a bird. No, that's not a bird, that's a fish. And then some big heated debate about whether it's a bird, fish, or a stag. But
this has come to you as an artist, and this is how you're kind of growing and developing. But then also you're then doing workshops and sharing it with others, and then they're bringing other things to the table, and it's just this whole big ongoing process of creating from the natural world and reinventing it in some way from the fallen wood. It's not being destroyed for your artwork. No materials have been killed in the making of this sculpture, and that's fantastic. What's your favourite piece of work to date?
Yeah, but it's probably the stag, the first one that I did.
Yeah.
It was the one that started the whole thing off. It's still a really striking piece. However, I've done work since then that I've really enjoyed. The piece called Glide, A Bird in Flight, which that was probably one of my favourites. Well, that one in the Millbridge Gallery in Skipton, and sold just this week actually. That's flown up to a new home now. So it's one of those times where you put so much into them. There's an element of kind of excitement. That's another one, another work in someone's home, and another collector, which is great, and another new beginning for someone to start collecting the work. But that's an element of kind of personal engagement in the work, and I think you always have the element for artists whereby when someone takes a piece of work, take a little bit of you as well, and when you put the effort into it, it's great to feel that someone else appreciates it, but also it's a little bit of sadness that actually I ask people, and they rarely do it, but I ask people to send me a photograph of it when it's back in their home, so I can get a feel for what it looks like in their environment, because when you see it in your house or in your studio or in friends' houses, it's never the same as when you see it in its final location. So Fully Glide was a recent favourite, and I'm really glad that someone else liked it as much as I did and wanted to actually hand over some of their extremely hard-earned money to have it in their house, which is a real honour, to be honest. You know, the fact that people want to spend money on things that you do.
Absolutely. It's like people are adopting them, and then you're keeping an eye on where your little animals have gone to. And do you find that people do collect your work quite a lot? Like they kind of fall in love with the first piece, and then they're like, and then because they've had such a reaction, because there is a reaction to your work. I mean, I can imagine it being, you know, kind of shown in a garden or something. People go, "Is that a bird?" You go, and then people go, "Well, look closely," and you'll be like, "Oh wow, that's amazing!" Yeah, I can see it. Or even people's homes are like, it's kind of lifelike. So
I have a lot of admirers, people who will come specifically to see my stuff, you know, and because it's not the same every time. People do want to come back and see what's next. And I think what I find is that people like come and collect the smaller pieces, because the bigger show pieces aren't at everyone's budget, basically.
Yeah.
So I have quite a lot of people who like to collect the smaller pieces, because even though they're a smaller piece, they're still a one-off. And I think that's quite not unique in the market, but I think, you know, to get in truly individual artwork at an affordable price is reasonably unique, really, because, you know, they're all one-offs. But because the nature of the person and the materials, you can actually do that. You know, and that's that's the beauty of it, really, is that you can afford to make art that's accessible and affordable, but not undermining other people's art, because, you know, some people's art is expensive because they have to put the investment of the process, which is the money of the materials and the time it takes to cast and finish and so on. And that has to be costed into a business, and I completely understand that. So I don't want to undermine other people's business by selling my work too cheaply. But there is also an underlying factor that it is really only sticks. So you're paying for my time and my skill and less for the material.
Yeah.
That reason, people can afford to collect, which is a really nice thing to do, because it does mean that your art gets out there and people get to see the work. And that gives me the ability to create the bigger pieces that I enjoy and put the expression into the bigger work. Because, you know, the cost isn't prohibitive like it is with some processes such as bronze casting that I used to do. That was prohibitive. You couldn't afford to make a bigger piece of work and do what you really, really wanted to do, because you just couldn't get the investment and the capital up front to produce the big bronzes. So it's nice that people want to collect, and I know people do, you know, look me out in fairs and shows, because they like to see what's happening. Maybe it's not to meet me, but it's more to see what's the next thing I've managed to create. So, do
you do anything with a park or with a woodland, or where you go out on an adventure trail?
I put proposals together to do that. I haven't done one of those yet. I would love to do it. I think if anyone's listening and wants to do that, that would be great.
I think that would be amazing. A regular event at a parkland or a woodland, sorry. And as you're taking the children along, have some of your work in the woods. So, you know, so part of like them actually finding little bits to create with, they've also got to spot your work as well in the woods.
That'd be fabulous. A huge fan of, you know, people who do the outside installations in woodland.
Yeah.
David Nash's work is incredible. You know, I love the sculpture park. I know that's a little bit different, because the Ocean Sculpture Park is not all the work is kind of created for the environment. It's work that's been moved to that environment. But the fact that work is outside and is viewed outdoors, it's just wonderful. So yeah, I would love to do that. That would be fabulous. And I have approached various places, but I think it's, as my profile has increased, I think the chances of someone saying yes are increasing, and I feel a yes is nearer than a no.
Absolutely. I think you tick all the boxes, don't you? You're environmental. Yeah. It's great for children. It's great for adults. It's fun. It's inviting. And who's inspired you in your life?
Yeah, Nash, Gormley, all those people I think are great, because I love the way that they work. My true favourite is Rodin. He's a huge influence of mine in terms of the way that he's a sculptor. And so between those kind of people like Nash and Goldsworthy, Gormley, and then the more classical elements of like Brancusi or Giacometti, Rodin, I think those people together give me the inspiration that I need for the work that I do. I don't know who said it, but it's a little bit cheesy. Someone said that, you know, if you'd never seen a tree before and you saw it in a gallery, you just think it was the best work of art you'd ever seen. And I think that's just, you know, that's the essence of it, really. You know, it's just, the natural world is just absolutely fascinating.
So what day are you doing the art market?
24th of June.
What are you looking forward to the most about doing the art market?
it's the first one I've done, but I've got friends who've exhibited at the art market before. So Helena Sharple is there this year, so he's got the stall, got to stand opposite me. So Helena's doing her wire work, which is amazing. She's opposite me. Samantha Bryan, who did the fairies, she's not there this year, but she did last year and the year before, and she's great. And then Kathy Emmett from DRM Design, she's on the same floor as me. So I've got a lot of friends and sort of people who have done fairs and so on within the past, and they've just said it's a fantastic event. But for the people who come are just really well informed. I think you get a really good crowd who have come there to see art, buy art, which is great, but just to it's a really nice and well informed crowd, and I'm looking forward to meeting the people, and I can't wait. Really, it was a real joy when I was accepted. It's a tick on the CV. Really, I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to get there.
Oh, we can't wait to see you. Thank you so much, Ian, for the interview, and look forward to seeing you on the 24th of June. If you would like to know more about the art markets, go to www.artmarkets.co.uk.